podcast. Today, I am super excited to be joined by Veronica Green, and we're going to be talking about personal development and why it's so important for your team, not only when they come on board, but when those team members have been with you a long time as well. And I know most of you will probably know about personal development, but we're going to go a little bit deeper today. We're going to really delve into why it's so important, but not only why it's so important, the importance of to actually have a structure in place as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to introduce you guys. Veronica, thanks for joining me today. Super excited to have you here.
Thank you. So am I. Yeah.
It's awesome to be here. Thank you so much for joining us. So tell us a little bit about you, first of all, and then we'll get deep into what we're going to talk about around PD, if that's okay.
For sure. So I am Veronica Green. I am an early years consultant and mentor, and I've been doing this full time for the last 5 years. So I love creating professional development that's inspiring for educators, directors, leaders, that helps them to confidently educate with creativity and connection. And professional development is, I think, integral to like bringing on new ECEs, keeping them, having growth and challenge, solving problems. Like there's so many aspects to it. PD can be rejuvenating. It's not just meant to be learning. It's supposed to be meant to rejuvenate you as well. So over the last 5 years, I've been providing professional development for ECEs globally. And I specifically specialize in loose parts play, as well as the Reggio Emilia approach. And then out of survival, I had to learn about sensory processing because our son was diagnosed as being autistic at the age of 2.5. I was running a family day home at that time. And so many behaviors that I did not understand, not know what to do. iMessages and redirection did not work. And so I had to learn about sensory processing out of survival so I could support him and the children in the program. And what I learned is that understanding how our sensory systems develop and how to accommodate that really benefits all children. And so I was able to create a very inclusive environment where we were able to embrace child-led play. I found more common confidence in my role. And so I share a lot from my practice from that within my trainings as well.
I love that. So I'm going to touch on this, and this will be, I want to ask a quick question. We hadn't planned for this, but I think it's important to kind of get an idea of this total scope or spectrum that we're looking at here. Give me an example, if you don't mind, of maybe a center or a business that's got a really good PD plan in place, right the way down to the other end of the extremities. So 0 in place. Give me a ballpark of what something looks like, because people are going to be sitting at all different levels, aren't they, Veronica? Let's face it. So give me an example of maybe a worst case scenario compared to a best case, if you don't mind.
So I think best case scenario is, and it starts with the director or the leader. So they need to know what their vision is for their program, and they need to effectively communicate that with the educators, parents, and have the educators involved in the process. This is not a hierarchical thing. This is a collaborative and co-learning experience. So directors, supervisors, knowing exactly what your program philosophy is, what your values are, and being able to involve educators in that process, because that dictates what kinds of professional development you're going to look for. So if you are emergent, child-led programming, you're not going to look for, teacher-directed activities, right? That's not what you're going to be going for. So you need to make sure that your PD aligns with your values. And when everybody's involved in that and there's a clear vision, then it brings everybody to the table. You're all on the same page. And I really think it helps educators feel like they're a part of the process. So they're not just being told to do this, that, hey, we're having this speaker come. Because lots of times I see comments all over Facebook that they feel like it was a waste of time, that it was boring, it didn't actually meet their needs. So I understand as directors, you have lots going on, but taking intentional time to create a PD plan for yourself and for your team can really help bring a sense of community, that agency that we're looking for, because educators don't want to just be told what to do, just like children don't. They want to have a sense of that agency, right? They want to have a sense of control in their own early years practice, because that's what keeps them going. They need to be challenged. They need to be inspired. So long-winded answer. Having your vision, knowing what that is, having your educators on board, having your families know about it, questioning, using that critical reflection. Does your program reflect your values? And then how does PD support us to reach this vision?
Love that. So let's go. You talked about the upper end in what an ideal world, what that looks like. Let's be honest, there's some centers or businesses that don't have any of that in place.
Yeah.
And what kind of problems do you think that causes when you don't have that PD in place for the team?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think directors and every educator and everything, there's a lot of daily fires to put out. So finding the time to create a PD plan can be challenging sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
So I want to be empathetic to that as well. Like there's lots of things going on in our profession and community that can make it really challenging. So I find at the other end, from my experience, and sometimes speaking with other colleagues, and this is not to talk down or anything, it's just sometimes when we get inquiries, it's like, hey, can you do a training for us?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, what are you looking for? Am
On
I even
what?
the right consultant for you?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I specialize in certain things, right? Like to stay in my lane because that's what I'm really good at.
Yeah, totally.
So it's more like, or it's too general, or even then it's like, can you do a training on, like, say for me, even me, if you ask for just a training on loose parts play, there's still lots of unique aspects within that. So, the more specific that you can get, the better it is for the consultants. But as a consultant, it's also up to me to make sure that I'm asking the right questions to make sure that I am the right person for this. I'm the right teaching style for your group, and that I can meet your team's needs where they need support and challenge and inspire them as well. So that's also, I always say, like, consultants are here to support directors. We're not here just to provide a training and move on. We're just as passionate about the profession as you are, and we want to keep educators in the profession.
Yeah.
That's what our goal is. So,
and if you guys are watching this as well, do me a favor as well. Either drop down live or put replay in and tell me what some of your questions are around personal development for your team. What we'll do then is we'll obviously relay those to Veronica, and we'll ask Veronica to kind of contribute back, and we'll chip in wherever we can as well with our team too. But obviously, I'm kind of stating the obvious here, Veronica, but those centers that don't necessarily have good, PD in place, do you generally feel that affects the retention of those team members?
yes, because it's going to lead to burnout, because educators are constantly putting fires out every day. But if they don't have the skills and the support and the resources to start diminishing some of those flames and those fires, it's a direct path to burnout. So, and that's what leads educators to leave. Before the pandemic, educators were leaving the field within the first 5 years.
Yeah.
I don't know what the new stats are because they're just starting to research this stuff, but I'm sure it's a lot sooner than that. And every educator is going to be prone to experiencing burnout. I did as well. I almost left the profession too, because I started questioning everything in my practice. I went, why am I doing this? Why am I doing it this way? So knowing what my values were and using professional development helped me figure out who I am as an educator, and that ignited my flame. And now I know what I'm doing, and I'm feeling very confident in that. So when if you're not too sure how to create a PD plan, or like why it's so important, especially for new ECEs, there's a struggle to get educated ECEs in different levels. You can have a passion for children, you can have a passion for play, but when you are faced with a lot of behaviors that you don't know what to do, or you don't know what child-led planning is, or emergent curriculum, those are the biggest things of our roles, or talking with parents.
Yeah, totally.
That's going to create a lot of confusion and exhaustion, and those educators are going to leave.
I love the fact you touched there on sorry to interrupt you. I love the fact you touched on the parents too, because the amount of conversations I have with people where, we almost don't realize the importance of that communication with the parents sometimes. And we rely on maybe using an app to communicate, or we don't actually have that interaction as much anymore. Another quick question as well. This was raised. I was at a conference last week in Miami, and we had a financial expert in that was looking at businesses and scenarios and all this analysis. One of the things they spoke about was that they actually say that they actually said that the staffing crisis was going to happen regardless of COVID.
Mhm.
Okay. And I think a lot of blame, etc., comes from, oh, well, COVID caused a problem, mass exodus. But actually, if you look at the stats and the numbers, particularly, US, Canada, UK, etc., there was actually a lot of people that were, we were struggling in
Yeah.
general. What's your thoughts around that, if you don't mind me asking? Because I lots of
Oh,
different opinions around this.
yeah, I 100% believe that there's always been a struggle for a long time. And the flat out thing of it is the major one thing is that we are just not paid enough. It's not a living wage. A lot of educators have 2, 3 jobs
Yeah,
to even just barely afford. I mean, nowadays it's even more insane because of inflation. But before all that, lots of educators had 2 jobs, even as an ECE. And here in Canada, we have lots of different like levels, but like
yeah,
as like a designated ECE in the room, that wage is still probably not enough. And I understand centers are doing the best that they can, but I mean, if you can't make ends meet with this job, you're going to go search for other things.
yeah,
Like I
totally.
said, love for children and passion doesn't put food on the table.
No,
So I totally understand that. I mean, if I could pay everybody properly, I would, but I use my skills to try and keep people into the profession and
I love
grow
that.
as best as they can and advocate for better wages, better that. But that's only one aspect.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
It is a major aspect, but it's only one. The other thing is that what is your culture like at your center? Do educators feel like they belong? Do they feel like they have the ability and the safety to make choices and try new things and voice their opinion on something that's happening? And there'll be critical reflection and feedback around that. That is another big thing that drives educators out. I've worked in some wonderful centers. I've also worked in some very toxic centers as well. So, and it's exhausting and it makes you want to leave when you don't
yeah,
feel that connectedness. You don't feel like you have a level of support. So it's not about shaming. It's about using our critical reflection that we do in our practice anyways to reflect on our own roles and how we're supporting children. We have to look at ourselves. This is why I feel like I love the Reggio Emilia approach. I'm very inspired by it because it looks at all the protagonists, the child, the educator, and the family. And we all have equal rights. We all have roles. And
yeah.
so I feel like that approach helps us to bring everybody to the table and to the aspect and to considerations of things. And so that it's not just about the children. The children are so, so important, but so are we and so are the families.
Yeah, totally. That's a very good point. Completely agree with you on that one. So we talked about obviously why personal development's important, but you know, it's not just important to have personal development. We need to go deeper on that. So my next question to you is around the importance of actually having a plan in place. So what's your kind of guidance or suggestions or advice you would give people around where to even start with this?
Yes. So this is a framework that I use with directors or even ECEs can use it as well. So I think the one thing we need to use is we have great observation skills when we're looking for children's development and interests and all of that. We need to use that skill in our own practice. So and reflective practice. Reflective practice is where you actually can make new learning and new connections. It's not just about the doing. We need to sit back and reflect on our practice. And so the first things that I ask people to do is just easily ask yourself, what's going well? What's not going well?
Okay.
And why do I think that is? Open-ended questions, non-judgmental, but be honest and be truthful and just simply ask and, reflect. You could write it down, you could put it in a notebook, whatever, right? So I think it's just those 3 simple questions to give you a starting point and you can start to see then you use your observation skills and look at what you've written down to go, okay, well, what have I written? What topics am I really struggling with? What is the deeper problem? And when you look at that, ask yourself why. Like, don't just say, I'm struggling with behaviors. I don't know what to do. Okay, well, if that's what you've written, why is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
What is the issue? Can we go a little deeper? And
I
then
love
once you have some observations, then you can start to I like to use like what's called like a confidence inventory kind of thing. So there's lots of different areas in a practice that you have, right? So it might be like, how confident are you on a scale of like 1 to 10?
Okay.
Within planning, documentation, communication with families, setting up your environment, routines, like just give a quick inventory. Where do you feel like you're at in all these different aspects of your role? and then asking yourself, like, what is my biggest struggle right now? And where do I want to be in 3 months? Where do I want to be? So starting to create some goals, using that critical reflection, right? And
Yeah.
then the next step would be we all take PD. We always take PD, right? But sometimes we forget that we've taken it, or we don't realize what we still have access to. So take a quick PD inventory of like the last 3 to 6 months of what you've taken, whether that's books, articles, workshops, conferences, summits, podcasts, all of that is great PD. So, but take a quick inventory and see where you have been putting your focus. What have you been putting your focus on for learning?
Yeah.
Are you just focusing on what's fun and interesting to you? Or are you actually looking at PD that's solving your current problems?
Love that.
Because PD is meant to inspire and support, but it's also meant to solve the problems that you're experiencing right now, fill gaps, and also challenge you to keep growing as well. So once you have that, then you can start to go, you want to start looking at like your strengths, what areas of support you need help in, and then your interests. So like I have like 3 columns, and I would just start writing down some observations in that, like what are my strengths, what am I really good at, and not just necessarily within the early years field. Like there are some teams that I've worked with where they're like, they have some educators that are phenomenal at digital photography and videography. So it's like,
Okay.
how can we use other skills that our educators have to support our team? Because we need to do documentation. We need to make the learning visible. So how can I use that, right? Like it's not just about what happens in the classroom, what happens outside
I
as
love that.
well.
Yeah.
Maybe there's someone that's a fantastic artist. Why aren't we using them more for process art to learn from? Maybe they know more about clay and all the different kinds of materials. This is what helps educators feel like they belong, and you can really create that great sense of community, right? So strengths, areas of support, because we all have struggles, everybody does. And then what are their interests as well? And that, and then you can start to see major topics. You could start to see like maybe it is we need to learn more about behaviors, maybe we need to learn more about childhood planning, maybe we need to learn more about outdoor play. You can start to see like topics that are coming out with that. And I suggest to take out no more, like even when I say 3 to 5, that sounds like a lot, but like look for anywhere between yeah, I would like 2 to 4 topics, maybe that. And look at those topics and then start going, okay, what kinds of PD opportunities can I provide for my team that will help them in these areas for this maybe quarter?
Yes.
PD is most effective when it aligns with your time and energy. So this isn't about racking up PD hours. This is about inspiring, solving problems, and providing growth and challenge. So when we are intentional about how much and the what we are providing, this is what helps support our teams. And so look for those general areas, start thinking about what PD opportunities can we provide, whether that's paid or free. Start putting things on a calendar for that quarter. So you start planning it out, because you need to consider all the different events that happen in a year, right? Maybe you have a month where like educators are taking a bunch of time off of vacation. So let's not plan for a team workshop then, right?
Yeah.
Like let's get intentional around this. Do I need to provide team training all the time, or can I do individual? These
Well,
couple educators are really struggling in this area, so I'm going to invest them go to this particular training, and then we'll save these dollars for this team training as well.
that was exactly going to be my question, if you don't mind. I
Yeah.
was going to ask you literally, do you find that people just tend to generalize and go, oh, we all need this, and then they put on a course for everyone? Do you find many people do this separation around more personalized, or is it usually across the board more generic?
I mean, I find a bit of both because I offer both. I offer trainings like on an like not on a one-to-one basis, but like where individuals could just sign up, or I offer team workshops as well.
Yeah.
But from the comments that I read in Facebook and stuff like that, or on social media, is when we start seeing that they're like, oh, it's just a waste of time. I've already
Yeah.
learned this how many times? I don't need another training on this. This is where, as leaders and directors, and even educators can voice, hey, this team training's coming up. Do I have to be there, or can I go to this one instead, or how can I contribute to this? How can I bring my knowledge to this training as well? Because we're all experts, right? Like we all have our own sense of strength and stuff. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
totally.
finding a balance, you have to work within your budget, right? Everybody's got their own budgets and resources. So I think it's asking that critical reflection. Does this need to be a team workshop, or do I need to just invest in the how many number of educators that need help? And if that's one or five, depending on how many you have, like
Yeah,
this, that critical reflection. How, because when you have a plan, then you can start allocating your resources better too.
yeah, totally.
And you
And
can
this,
go, can we try a free one to see if this works? Can we try a free training, or do we need to invest money in it?
yeah,
Right.
this is exactly why as well we launched DC Mastery. Off that basis was purely because different people have different strengths. They don't have the time to all sit down together. Maybe they've got family, they can't come to those big trainings. There's so many different variations. We're all
Yeah.
personalized, we're all individuals. So, and that's why we created it. That's the whole idea why we connected with great coaches like you, is that. And also the other big thing for me as well is sometimes individuals don't connect with certain people. So it's important that you have that variety there, because a particular business might connect more with someone that talks about a similar topic, but actually they deliver it a slightly different way, and they
Yes.
just resonate more as well.
Yes.
And it's interesting as well. You talked a lot about loose parts, and one of the big things, and I hesitate saying this sometimes, but I think it's important. I've sat down with a lot of coaches from places like New Zealand, where the New Zealand educational system is significantly further forward.
Mhm.
Because obviously it was the focus of their prime minister.
Yeah.
They had that core project. But it's interesting. I think sometimes we get so caught up in just local that we don't actually think at a bigger scale and see potentially, if you can tap into we've got coaches now from New Zealand doing speech pathology. If you can tap into that train that's 4 or 5 years ahead of where things are right now, let's make those opportunities open to everyone.
That's why I love online learning. Now, I know a lot of us are zoomed out, but I wanted to talk about that too. It's like, do we have in person or do you go online? So I think it's important, again, that critical reflection to go, okay, how many times have we had this in person come already?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't know how many EC consultants are in each city. I mean, I
Yeah.
think we're pretty slim. So when the online learning happens, that opens up your opportunity to learn from a variety of voices. And that's what we need. I never want someone to only learn from me, because I have my approach, I have the way I teach it, and I have my experiences. And that's a very limited way of learning. So I want you to take, trainings from a variety of different people, even on the same topic, because they've
Yeah,
had
totally.
very different perspective. But
Completely.
the whole point is that you need to know who you are as an educator, what your values are, how are you interpreting it, and how are you applying it into your practice. This
Yeah.
isn't just about following rules and regulations and a checklist. This is about that educator as researcher mindset. PD helps with that. So it's really knowing who you are can really help drive what kind of PD you take. It keeps you in the profession, it keeps you going. It makes you more open to that critical reflection and finding more confidence in your role. So yeah. So I think opening up experiences to online learning is wonderful, because you can get so many, like I get to collaborate with so many amazing organizations all over the world. I worked with an organization in Ukraine in January. In April, I'm working with an organization in Croatia. So like it's incredible that people want to bring in loose parts play into all their different places, and they're coming to me from this perspective, right? And I'm
Love
always
that.
like, this is how I interpret it.
Yes.
How is someone else in doing it? And so when you talk about different consultants and how they provide, that's really important. I think it's really important to know, how does your team learn best? What are their learning styles? And does the consultant that you're bringing in match that the best way? Especially if
I
you're
completely agree.
especially if you're going to invest in team training, because that's going to cost a little bit of money.
Yeah.
So it's like, for myself, I use the art of storytelling. So I'm really good at connecting theory to practice and bridging that gap. I love reading the papers, the textbooks, but like I can pull out the key details and I can share it in a way that's very practical, and I can use stories to connect that. So that's
Yeah.
kind of like what I'm really good at. Plus, I share a lot of personal experience with our son being autistic and all of the behaviors that I had to learn. And so I'm very open about that. So I use storytelling, pictures, videos, reflective practice, discussion, like hands-on play. Like I really try to create it engaging and different ways that adults learn. So I think it's important when you're doing those observations. What are my team strengths? What are their areas of support? How do they learn? We're trying to learn how children learn,
Yeah,
but we also
totally.
need to
Yeah.
know how we learn.
Yeah, of
And you
course.
can use that to inform what kind of PD are you going to take? Because then we will hopefully start to slow down the comments of this was a waste of time and I didn't learn anything.
I love that. No, right. I could talk to you forever about this, and I get quite excited. I love that we're on the same page though around that. Just because one person delivers it one way, someone else might deliver a totally different way. I could not agree more with you. And everyone will connect to different people, and there's different learning styles. One last question for me before we wrap up, and then we'll talk about how people can get to connect with you. One of the big things we believe as a company is that it's that constant reinforcement. It's great to be able to learn from online or learn from in person, but one of the best ways to obviously retain that information is to then articulate that or deliver or coach someone else. Okay. What's your thoughts around that? Do you encourage, for example, let's imagine a team member goes on I don't know, speech pathologist course, for example. Do you often try and encourage those team members to then go back and share that with the rest of the team? What's your thoughts around that?
Okay, so I have two different thoughts with that. So I do think that as educators, we are lifelong learners and we very much love to learn, 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 learn. But that's only one part of the phase.
Yeah.
So learning is great, but then we also need to get into that reflective practice and go, what have I just learned? Have I been doing that in my practice? Why or why not? And then start renewing your practice by going, what's one change I can make, right? So we got to put the learning into action because this isn't about racking up PD hours. And sometimes I feel like that's what happens because we love to learn. I get it. But it's like, this is where, how can we use reflective practice and actually implement the changes? Because I do find that sometimes I get comments of educators saying, well, I've learned this years ago. But then I'm like, so I see those comments often and I go, okay, how am I not saying it in a way that it's connecting then, because I need to reflect on my practice. But then I also go, well, what's happening if educators have been learning this for years but we're not seeing the changes in the profession? So where's the disconnect? And I have to look at my own teaching styles and go, how can I deliver the message better? But then I'm also wondering, are educators just getting stuck in the learning phase? Are they actually reflecting and then renewing their practice? And you have to give yourself time and space for that to happen, which means you can't constantly be taking workshops like multiple times a week, or reading a bazillion books. Like you have to give your brain time and space
Totally.
to do that. So can the other part, and I've lost my train of thought.
No, what I was saying there, for example, if a team member goes on a training, for example.
Yes, there we go. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that back. I wanted to mention that first part first. So I understand that you might be only sending one or two educators to a training. I think it's great to have them come back and share some of their biggest takeaways and their reflections from it and what they might do. However, I do worry about the whole telephone game and lost in translation, because when you're going to a speaker like myself, I've been doing this for years. I have been working on my practice, my presentation skills for years to make sure that message is getting there effectively. Someone who goes to one training and then teaching the entire team, I worry that there might be a lot of lost in translation, misconceptions, not being done properly. However, though, if you've gone to a training and they provide some sort of resource guide, a list of other resources, or they allowed you to have the slides or something like that, whatever they've allowed you to share, because we have to follow the rules. Use that to guide conversations and sharing it with the team, because then we're going to be more on the same page, because everybody interprets things differently. So, and everybody's going to take different things away from that workshop. So, like, I always provide digital resource companion guides because I want to support your learning outside of the training. You're not going to remember everything. That's not going to happen. That's not realistic. So there's going to be key information in that guide. There's going to be links and resources. Use that at your team meeting or whatever to start facilitating a conversation. And that's how I design them. I want to you to start conversation with your team as well, and with your fellow educators. So I don't really know if I would say once that person goes and they go back and directly and then like teach it like
No,
they
of
would
course.
like a training.
Yeah.
But I would say let's have a conversation and use the resources that they have provided. And if they don't, if you find that you're looking like there's a gap or a question comes up, consultants want to be reached out to. We want to support you. So go back to that consultant and be like, hey, we had this conversation with our team, and this is what happened. And this is kind of the questions that are coming up or the situation that we're stuck in. Can you provide any further support? I wouldn't be shocked if there wasn't a consultant out there that wouldn't provide either support through email or a video or a phone call. I've jumped on Zoom. Like, we want to help. So reach back out to them. We always say, reach out to us if you have any questions. Take advantage of that.
I think too, the problem is though, what often happens is people do a course, they'll go, great, yeah, they're really inspired, they'll take it back. But then sometimes then it's that, as you talk about it, reflection first. Am I actually implementing what I've learned here? Am I putting in practice what I've learned? But then also as well, I do see it a lot where centers, for example, will send one team member on a course, then they ask them to bring that back. And I agree with you. It is really hard for someone to, that's never taught others before, to try and articulate that to everyone else. But I think there's got to be some kind of point where, we've got to make sure that, hey, you've learned this, how are you implementing that? Because sometimes it's too often, let's go on a course, you feel inspired, you're motivated, you go back, and then not much happens off the back of that. And it's really difficult. And there's a fine line there, I think, isn't there? So now on that basis, you spoke about this, you touched on that you got a great free guide for people to start to work off. Because as you talk about, digital resources are great. Tell everyone, if you don't mind, I will share the link for those that are watching live right now and in the comments. But those that are listening on the podcast, what's the website that, first of all, where they can find out everything about you in general?
Sorry, I'm just going to bring up, my computer is not happy with me. There we go. So you can find tons of resources on my website, which is cultivatingconfidence.ca. And this free guide to help you create a PD plan, the specific link is cultivatingconfidence.ca/team-pd-guide.
There you
and
go.
you can get it. It'll get sent right to your inbox. And there's tons of resources on my website on like loose parts play, behaviors, all that stuff. So it's not just about creating PD. That's just what we're talking today to help you get more specific. But like, I specialize in those other topics, and you can find so much stuff on my website. So I do provide a lot of high quality free content as well, because I understand the early years does not have a lot of room in their budgets. So when you do invest in PD, when you do use those limited budget dollars, I want to make sure that you're investing it well.
Love that. Love that. Veronica, I cannot thank you enough for being with us. I know, one of the tricky things with running these sessions live is that people are always in the rooms, they're hands-on. So it's really hard to get people to join these live. But actually, the feedback we get post, where people go back and watch the replays. So it's really important, guys, just because you're watching the replay, make sure you put your comments and questions in. Tag in Veronica, tag in myself. We're more than happy to be here to help you and support you. Just because you don't get the opportunity to miss it. I get lots of comments after going, oh, I missed the live. And they feel the opportunity's gone. Look, we're here to support you guys. That's what this is all about. Just because you can't attend it live, it does not matter. Make sure you take advantage of Veronica, myself, and the rest of the team here at CBG. We are here to support you. Veronica, I am super grateful for you joining me. I literally could spend hours talking about this topic, because I think it's so important that we have that variety, and people don't just stick to that one person. They get to see what else is out there. So I'm really grateful for you joining us, and I look forward to maybe connecting a few weeks from now. We'll run another session, go a little bit deeper on more topics like this.
For sure.
So Veronica some love in the comments as well, if you don't mind. Drop your questions in. I look forward to catching you guys on the next podcast. Bye for now, everyone.